Potential clients of a law firm typically make an appointment for an initial consultation. Some firms advertise that, in fact, that they will not charge anything for an initial consultation. And during these initial consultations, it's not settled yet even whether the lawyer will proceed with representing the client. Potential client could be one or more individuals or an organization like a corporation, in which case an individual associated with the organization will typically meet with the lawyer for the consultation. This could be the owner of the business or a manager or even in-house counsel for a large company. In this initial consultation, the lawyer is trying to decide whether it's a type of case his firm handles and the type of client they want to represent, and they're trying to gather information in order to check for conflicts of interest before proceeding with the representation. The potential client may not have decided yet whether to hire this firm. They might be waiting to hear about how much this firm charges or whether this is the right lawyer to hire for the matter. After this initial consultation, each side makes a decision about whether to proceed. Now, note that these initial consultations may take place in person or by phone or by video chat. But some crucial information is shared during an initial consultation, and we have a rule governing these situations, ABA Model Rule 1.18. The model rules call the person meeting with a lawyer a prospective client, and lawyers have some duties to prospective clients even when the lawyer or law firm does not end up providing representation after that first conversation. In other words, suppose there's no client-lawyer relationship formed. In that case, most of the rules that apply to lawyers and their clients would not apply in this situation. But this rule still imposes some duties or obligations on lawyers regarding these prospective clients because they often share sensitive information during the initial consultation. And sometimes lawyers offer a little bit of free legal advice, even if they have not already decided to handle the matter. Let's dive in. Model Rule 1.18a begins, a person who consults with a lawyer about the possibility of forming a client-lawyer relationship with respect to the matter is a prospective client. It continues, 2. Even when no client-lawyer relationship ensues, a lawyer who has learned information from a prospective client shall not use or reveal that information, except as Rule 1.9 would permit with respect to information of a former client. Now, in other words, there is a duty to keep confidential the information that somebody shares during their initial consultation, even if the lawyer does not end up taking on the client's matter. In terms of defining the parameters and exceptions for this rule, it says to treat them the same as former clients under Rule 1.9 for purposes of what information may be disclosed and under what circumstances. Rule 1.8 continues. 3. A lawyer subject to paragraph B shall not represent a client with interests materially adverse to those of a prospective client in the same or substantially related matter if the lawyer received information from the prospective client that could be significantly harmful to that person in the matter, except as provided in paragraph D. This means that doing an initial consultation, even if the lawyer does not proceed with the representation for some reason, could preclude the lawyer from representing any party in the same matter, especially if sensitive information was shared that's material to the matter. So subsection C continues, if a lawyer is disqualified from representation under this paragraph, no lawyer in a law firm with which the lawyer is associated may knowingly undertake or continue representation in such a matter, except as provided in paragraph D. In other words, even though there was no client-lawyer relationship formed, because it was merely a consultation and either the lawyer declined the representation or the client decided not to hire the firm, even so, the entire firm will be disqualified from representing another party in the matter, just as if they had a conflict of interest. Some exceptions apply, though, that are set forth in the next section. When the lawyer has received disqualifying information, as defined in paragraph C, representation is permissible if, 1, both the affected client and the prospective client give informed consent confirmed in writing. Or 2, the lawyer who received the information took reasonable measures to avoid exposure to more disqualifying information than was reasonably necessary to determine whether to represent the prospective client. And, little I, the disqualified lawyer is timely screened from any participation in the matter and is apportioned no part of the fee therefrom, and written notice is promptly given to the prospective client. This is very similar to the imputation and screening rules under 1.9 and 1.10. Let's unpack this a little. First, the prospective client and the other party could, in theory, give written informed consent for the lawyer to proceed. It is possible, especially for corporate clients like insurance companies or banks, that they may not care, especially if they were careful about what they shared during the initial consultation. In addition to the type of screening that we saw in other conflicts rules, for prospective clients, screening is an option only if the lawyer was careful to get no more information than necessary about the client and about the matter during the initial consultation. And by necessary, we mean to decide whether to take the matter, which could relate to whether it would be a futile endeavor for the firm and to check for conflicts of interest. Let's look at some of the examples and clarifications in the ABA's comments. Okay, here's our first example from comment 2 to this rule. If a lawyer, let's say through an ad or website or in person, specifically requests or invites the submission of information about a potential representation without clear warnings and cautions limiting the lawyer's obligations, and someone provides that information in response, we're going to have a consultation. So 1.18 would apply. In contrast, a consultation does not occur if a person provides information to a lawyer in response to advertising that merely describes the lawyer's education and experience in areas of practice and contact information, or provides legal information of general interest. So, in other words, Rule 1.18 doesn't apply. So, what we're saying is that sometimes as a lawyer, you may receive an unsolicited packet of material, or especially emails, from people that you've never heard of who are telling you their whole story about their case and sometimes give a lot of unsolicited information that you didn't even ask for. You never even agreed to meet with them, and they send this information to you. Well, if your ad didn't ask them to do that, to submit the information, then we don't have an issue. This rule doesn't even apply. But let's say your website has a contact page where they're supposed to fill out their name, and then it asks them to explain the nature of their matter and maybe add attachments that are important documents to the case. Well, then you have asked for it. So at that point, now you have sensitive confidential information, so they count as a prospective client under this rule. It's important to note that a lawyer may condition a consultation with a prospective client on the person's informed consent that no information discussed during the consultation will prohibit the lawyer from representing a different client in the matter. So you can ask for that up front. Comment 5 says, if expressly provided, a prospective client may also consent to the lawyer's subsequent use of information received from the prospective client. So suppose, for example, that at the end of the consultation, when the client learns how much the lawyer charges, the client decides to keep looking for another more affordable lawyer. The lawyer could ask the client at that point if they would agree to let the lawyer use whatever information was shared in that meeting, should the lawyer need to. Some clients will agree and others will not. It just depends on the situation. Let's move on. Comment 6 says, even without an agreement, under paragraph C, the lawyer may represent a client with interests adverse to those of the prospective client in the same or substantially related matter, unless the lawyer has received from the prospective client information that could be significantly harmful if used in the matter. So suppose the consultation is very general and the lawyer decides immediately not to represent the client. For example, the client begins by saying they expect the lawyer to take the case pro bono and charge no fees, or the lawyer's unwilling to do that, or they clash at the outset of their conversation. Some firms represent only plaintiffs or only defendants, so that could be a reason that the lawyer concludes immediately that this client would not be a good fit for the firm. If no sensitive information is shared, there's no restriction on whether the lawyer or the firm could represent the opposing party. Now, comment 7 adds, the prohibition in this rule is imputed to other lawyers, just like in Rule 1.10. But imputation may be avoided if the lawyer obtains the informed consent confirmed in writing of both prospective and effective clients. If you get a test question about a prospective client who has an initial consultation and there's no ongoing representation after that, make sure to check for whether anyone gave consent to writing in your hypothetical and who gave that consent. Written consent must come from both or all the affected parties, just like with other types of conflicts of interest. The ABA clarified some of the wording and provisions of Rule 1.18 in 2020 in Formal Opinion 492. This rule prohibits, remember, accepting a new matter if the lawyer received information from the prospective client that could be, quote, significantly harmful to them in the new matter. So the question then is, what counts as significantly harmful information? Here's some examples. Views on various settlement issues like the price or the timing. Information relating to civil or criminal liability. Personal accounts of relevant events or the prospective client's strategic thinking about how to manage the situation. Another specific example, a 20-minute phone consultation in which the client outlines potential claims against the other party and the amounts that they would require to settle. A presentation, let's say, by a prospective corporate client about underlying facts and legal theories of its proposed lawsuit. All these are examples in Opinion 492. Also, sensitive personal information in a divorce case, a prospective client's financial information, possible terms and structure of a proposed bid to acquire a corporation, like in mergers and acquisitions. On the other hand, the ABA said in Formal Opinion 492 that there's no duty to a prospective client in these situations. Someone contacts a lawyer with the intent merely to disqualify the lawyer from representing other parties in the matter. Then there's no duty under Rule 1.18. And as the rule comments say, unilateral transmission of information to a lawyer does not create a Rule 1.18 duty. A nice example of Rule 1.18 in practice is found in APA Formal Opinion 9358. This is an older opinion. An attorney undertook representation of a client in a breach of contract claim and started working on the matter. But then a few weeks later, the opposing party in the litigation consulted with another lawyer in the attorney's firm about the same matter. But in the consultation, the other party disclosed no confidential information except the identity of the other party and the nature of the claim. So the other lawyer did a routine conflicts check and quickly discovered the conflict with this new potential client and immediately declined to represent this new party, the opposing party. So the lawyer and the attorney already representing the first client then discussed this situation. So first question that we could ask, may the attorney tell his client that the opposing party came in for a consultation with another lawyer in his firm? And the answer is no. The attorney may not tell the opposing party that the opposing party came in for a consultation, but he can continue to represent the client if the attorney does not use any information gleaned from the other party's consultation against the other party. Now, that concludes our brief overview of Model Rule 1.18.